This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us today for the Vivit Florida User Group virtual lunch and learn. So I don't know how many of you actually went out and bought food so that you could dine with us while listening to a great presentation and having a great discussion, but hopefully you did that. And all of us at Vivit, we absolutely hope that all of you are fine and well. So today's presentation, making ALM your own with workflow customization. So Mike, if you'd go to the next slide for me. And my name is Bob Cruz. I am the Florida Vivit co-leader. I'm also very proud to be on the Vivit board of directors. I'm the community chair, also CEO and co-founder of Checkpoint Technologies. I'm fortunate enough to know so many of you. I've been in IT for about 32 years now, and I've been focused on quality assurance and software testing. Long time partner in the ADM space. So I actually started off with Mercury Interactive, and I am exceptionally proud to be joined by Mike Warner. And not only is Mike today's presenter, he also recently agreed to team up with me to be the Florida co-leader for our Vivit local user group. So I'm psyched about that. Mike is a QA automation specialist with FCCI. So Mike, take it away and let everybody know about yourselves.
Thank you. I've been doing QA. I've been in the QA environment for a little over 20 years now. Basically went right out of college and went into QA, specializing in automation. So, I've back in early Windrunner days is when I started. And I've basically stayed with this tool set for the majority of my career. I've had opportunities that have presented themselves, like being able to speak at conferences and having Bob come to me and ask me about becoming a co-leader here, and it's just been an incredible ride. And I appreciate Bob and his help with my career, and every single person that I've gotten to meet along the way. And I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of you virtually now, but hopefully at some point in the future, actually face to face. As like I say, everybody I meet, I try and learn something new from them, and hopefully I can impart some knowledge for you as well today. So hopefully we'll have some good time, and let's figure out what we're going to do. Let's talk about this.
Fantastic, Mike. Yeah, you and I have known each other now for what, maybe 9 or 10 years, I think.
I think we've known each other for that long, but yeah. I know I've met you at so many user conferences and that kind of thing, over the years. But yeah, we finally basically been able to connect a bit more the past 9 or 10 years.
Yeah. So great. Thanks, Mike. And hey, real quick, Terry, you don't have to come off of mute, but I want to make sure I introduce Terry Serralo. A lot of you had a chance to chat with her. Super friendly, as you could tell, professional. She is the America's liaison on the staff for Vivit. So, and Mike and I want to give a big shout out to Terry. Yes. Terry, thank you so much for helping us organize our local user group meeting. So Mike, if you want to go ahead to a couple of slides, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping stuff. So everybody, so that you can focus on the slides, I'm going to take my camera off for just a little bit until the end, and also turn it over to Mike. But one of the things, again, we really do appreciate you joining us today, and hope you're all safe and healthy. So today's live session, it is being recorded, and it'll be posted for all Vivit members. So if you want to get access to that later, grab some popcorn, maybe open a cold one and watch it again. It'll be worth it. The on-demand recording, slide deck, and Q&A will be posted on the Vivit website under your local user group's group page. So that's the Florida local user group. If any of you have any questions, feel free to chat, submit a chat if you want, or send an email to me or Mike. We'll make sure you can get that. When you're not asking a question today, please mute your microphone. Please enter your audio PIN if you joined via phone in order to link your phone call with your GoToMeeting control panel, because this allows you to mute and unmute yourself during using the audio button rather than your telephone keypad. And it also ensures other participants will be able to see you when you're speaking. And if you don't want to unmute yourself, you're more than welcome to submit the question via chat, and I will be monitoring that throughout the webinar while Mike's speaking and afterwards, so that we can read those questions. And we will be sharing the way to redeem your lunch coupon at the end of the session. And it can only be provided in US currency, everybody. So we wanted to mention that because even though this is a Florida local user group meeting, we did open it up. So make sure you get your lunch gift card, okay? So on the next slide, shown here is a picture of the GoToMeeting control panel. If you have questions, you can click on the dialog box icon to show yourself on the webcam. Just click on the camera icon. We would absolutely love to see your smiling face if you'd like to do that. To submit a question, you click on that dialog box icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and type your question in there. By the way, if I happen to mention a bad joke, I appreciate it if you do a ha-ha or an LOL. That makes me feel so much better about myself. And we welcome you to personally ask your question by coming off mute. So you can also show yourself on the webcam if you want. To do that, again, you just click on that camera. On the next slide, for those of you that are joining and are not a Vivit member, I want to share with you what our community is all about. So it is all about advocacy, community, and education. We are an independent, not-for-profit service organization that represents the broad microfocus community globally. So we are around the world, and we are the endorsed microfocus software users group. Vivit's mission is to serve the microfocus community, as I mentioned, through advocacy, community, and education. Think of us as your ace in the hole. For almost 2 decades, we've been the unbiased, trusted, and field-tested user community for thousands of HP and more recently HPE software customers. And through acquisitions, our scope has expanded from our original focus on OpenView to include Mercury Interactive, Freshwater, and Vertica customers, developers, and partners throughout the globe and from all areas of business and industry. And with the merger of the HPE software and microfocus businesses, once again, we are here to help. We're here to help our members attain the maximum benefits from their investments in microfocus software. We are so excited to bring this local user group to you today. Enjoy the presentation, submit questions, and with that, Mike, sir, I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining today. It's kind of nice to get back to doing some kind of user groups like this. Gives a little bit of normalcy back, even though we can't do it, we can't all be together. At least we can kind of get a little bit of normalcy back, which I'm always personally looking for ways to get life to feel normal again. So getting into this, when Bob first approached me and said, you can talk about anything you want to talk about. So I had to think about it for a little while. And one of the things I remember as talking to multiple people is how a lot of people, they know about the workflow, but they don't really know all of the capabilities of what the workflow within ALM can do. And one thing that I found is, of course, every single company is different. You know, we all, maybe we all do build software, but we all do it a little bit differently. I'm sure if we polled every single person on this meeting, every single SDLC from the companies is going to be different. Whether it's the way that a defect kind of flows through the process, or if requirements have to be approved, or if a test has to be moved into a certain state before it can be executed. We all have different little rules in place that make our organizations unique. And ALM is a great tool straight off the shelf. It provides an incredible amount of flexibility and purpose to our teams. But if we can tweak it just a little bit, I think it makes it more attuned to our organization and it also can get more buy-in from other people in the organization. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to give a quick overview of the workflow, just real quick. And this is only going to be a 20-30 minute or so presentation, so we're not going to get really deep into the weeds with the workflow. Otherwise, I could talk for a couple hours on this at least. But we're going to do a real high-level overview, and then we're going to kind of go into 3 different scenarios. The first one is going to be using the workflow script generator to customize ALM. Then we're going to get into basically adding logic to existing ALM workflow actions. And last, we're going to talk about creating a brand new workflow action within ALM. So the workflow itself, this, like I said, it allows us to customize ALM for our own organization. And what we do is we can attach logic to all of the ALM actions so that we can perform a custom business flow, so that we can make it more what we want it to be for our organization. The technology, ALM uses VB script, so it's pretty easy to get in there and start coding. The basic logic of the workflow uses the LTA architecture, or the open test architecture. It would be the same code that you use if you were trying to attach, edit ALM resources from an external source. And to get to the workflow, you go through project customization by somebody that has admin rights. So this is something that's done in ALM. It's not done through the site admin. So we're going to start with the script generator. This is the easiest and simplest way to start getting into the workflow. This generator uses a familiar GUI object to help organize your ALM interface. Right now, it only customizes the defect module. So our first scenario, I think all of you have seen this. You click the new defect menu, the new defect button, it comes up, but out of the box, it displays a lot of fields that just are not necessary for certain users. And we really, for our organization, we want them to be in a different order. Pretty simple scenario. So let's take a look. So I'm in my ALM. And so I'm going to click new defect just to see what we're talking about here. Expand this so we can all see it a little better. So if this is a new defect, I really don't need actual fixed time closed-in version or a planned closing version. I mean, that doesn't make any sense when you're creating a new defect. And plus, you've got priority down here, and I actually have to scroll down to see severity, which is a required field. So that needs to be moved up as well. So let me close out of that. And let's go in. So you can see up here, I'm just going to click the Customize button and come into Customize. And here we are in Project Customization. And along the left-hand side down here, you can see Workflow. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at one of the script generators. And for the defects module, there are 3. The first one is a list customization. Basically, if you have 2 different lists, you can say, okay, well, if you pick this item in the first list, I want the second one to use this list. The kind of example they give here is if you have like multiple applications that is in a single ALM project, you pick an application, and then the second one is, okay, the versions of that application. So the one we're going to look at is the add defect customization. There's also one for just the normal defect customization as well. So in add defect, it comes up, and you can see here it's pretty simple. First, you select the user group, and I'm just going to click TD admin because that's what my user is. And then it's just as simple as, okay, well, you just move the fields over that you don't want. Don't want that one. Don't want that one. I don't need to know the estimated fixed time yet or planned closing version. But you know what? I do want summary up higher. And I want priority up higher. And I'm going to go ahead and click severity up higher. So I'm going to apply my script changes. Now what this does, this actually does write code to the workflow scripts. And so what it's saying here is just like any type of generated code, it's saying when we generate code, we're going to overwrite whatever is already there, which in this case, I'm fine with doing that. Just click yes. Click save, and then I'm going to exit out or return from the project customization. And whenever you're doing workflow, you can click either major or minor. For the workflow changes, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to click minor, click OK. So we're back into our defects module. So I'm going to click new defect. And you can see here, it's changed. We've gotten rid of some of those closed in version, actual fixed time. And I've got my priority and severity up here at the top. See, that's a really quick way that you can come into here. You can reorder things exactly how your business wants to see things. And like I said, you can take things off. You could do it by user group. So if you want your developers to have a specific set of fields, your QA people to have a specific set of fields, it's as simple as going through that drop down and clicking the fields over and around. Like I said,
Hey, Mike, if I can interrupt for 1 second, because I want this to be like a live virtual meeting. So we got one shout out already from the audience. Shout it out. That's cool. So that's awesome that you're able to show that. And one of the things I want to mention to everybody is, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mike's more than happy to take questions during the presentation.
Oh, yeah. And absolutely. If you have questions, please ask them. If I know it's going to be something I'm going to answer in a little bit, I might say, hey, just hold off a bit. But yeah, if you have questions, please ask them, because I know sometimes if I'm in a meeting or something and I don't ask it immediately, I may forget by the end.
Yeah. Especially if it's about part of your demo or something like that too.
Exactly.
So, all right, Mike, thanks.
Right. And if you think that part was cool, just wait till we get to the next one, because it gets even cooler and cooler as we go along. If I can find my mouse. So the next thing we're going to look at is adding logic to ALM workflow events. Now, everything that gets done in ALM is triggering an action event. Whenever you click on something, whenever you go to a new module, behind the scenes, all of those clicks and all of those things that you're doing are triggering workflow events. Now, in that workflow, the most common action events have already been predefined. So it's easy to just select them and add your logic to it. And every single module in ALM actually has its own set of actions predefined. Now, the common actions, and these are the ones you're going to see pretty much across the board in every single module, are at least these 5. The first one is move to, and this is executed whenever you select an item. So like if you're in the test plan and you select a folder, it executes a move to trigger. When you select a test or a requirement, anytime you are navigating around within a module, it's going to be firing this move to event. Now, once you're on one of those, an element like a requirement, there's a field can change. And this is executed when you change a field, but it's actually executed before the field actually gets changed. I know it sounds weird. So what's happened is if I go into a field and I type my text, right when I kind of click out of it, when Focus comes out of that event, before that data actually gets kind of set, it basically says, okay, wait a second, before you finish changing this field, do you have the ability to change this field? Can you actually change it? And if everything is good, then it lets it change. And that's when the next trigger happens is the field change. And that's exactly that. After a field gets changed, this code actually will run. Now, just like on the fields, there are posts. There is a can post. So this is executed. You've done all your changes. And so as you're clicking the OK button, kind of as it's going down, your OK button is going down. It says, OK, well, does this person, does the active user have the ability to post all of this information and commit it to ALM? So you can check, say, wait a second, you made all these changes, but can you do all this? And after that post is basically that. So as the OK button is basically coming up, if you want to think of it that way, all of the information has got committed to the ALM database, and then this after post event actually gets triggered. And we'll kind of look at this a little bit more. So our next scenario, we're in the test plan, and we know that in this scenario, we want all of our tests to be reviewed, and whenever they get reviewed, we put them in a status of ready. But what happens if somebody comes in and changes a step? What we would like to have the test status changed back to design if that happens. But if the status is not in ready, say it's in the error status or something like that, we'll just leave it there because we know some people are probably all actively working on it. So only if the status is ready, when a step changes, do we want to change it back to design. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like. So I'm going to go into my test plan. I have a test, and I'm going to go ahead and put it into a ready state. So everything's great. So, but somebody comes into the design steps, adding a cleanup step. We were just going to, add a cleanup step. Close open applications. So somebody's made a change to the test, but the status still says ready. And so we want to make sure that goes back to a design so that maybe somebody goes through here and looks and says, oh, wait a second, here's a test that's in design. We need to follow our process. So now we're going to go back into the project customization and go into the workflow. And this time we're going to go to the script editor. Let me expand this so you can kind of see what's going on here. So under our project, the first thing is we have a set of common scripts, and you can kind of see what these are. Whenever you enter a module or exit a module, when you can log in, can log out, that type of stuff. So these are all events that happen there. But if I open like the test plan, you can see here we got requirements, plan, lab. We have a specific script for the manual runner, business components. Pretty much all of the modules within ALM have these workflow scripts. So if I'm looking at the test plan, here are all of the predefined events that we have access to. If you create a new test, if you create a new test folder, configurations, or even adding parameters. So in our scenario, we're talking about if somebody makes a change to one of the steps. So you can see here, there's 4 steps here: new, move to, field can change, and field change. So what we want to do is we want to attach it to the field change because we want to make this, we want to force this decision after the field has been, a step has been changed. So all you have to do is you click on the event that you want, and you can see it automatically pre-fills your editor with, in this case, the sub function for that event, which is perfectly what we need. So at this point, we're just going to do a simple if, and I'm going to start typing test. And you can see here, this is where the workflow ID kind of helps you out. It gives you access to those fields. Oh, and it went away on me. So bug fields for defects, components, releases, resources, pretty much any object within ALM, you're going to be able to access through this code. And so in this case, I want to access the test. So I'm going to select the test fields, open up parentheses, and here you can see, if any of you are familiar with the actual database that this is running on, here are all of the fields in the database that are associated with the test. So I'm just going to scroll down here until I see my TS_status. There we go. Dot value. So if this is in a ready state, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, I just want to change that. Test fields, TS status equals design. End if. That's all you have to do. Now, of course, there's a lot of things you can do with this, just being able to access this. Now, the one thing to know is I didn't have to say which test to look for. the workflow already knows that. The workflow in this case, it already knows what test is selected. So I don't have to go through and say, okay, well, make sure you find this exact test ID, that type of thing. The workflow code in this situation already knows what test is working on. So what I'm going to do is, you can see after it makes an edit, it put a little dot here to let you know, hey, you've made changes to this module script. So I'm going to click save and look down here at the bottom, make sure we get the script successfully passed syntax check. Very, very important. And let me
And
exit
Mike,
out of
when you have a
this.
chance, I have a question from the group whenever you get to a pausing point.
Absolutely. What's the question?
So a couple of them. Can you create a trigger that sees that the test has changed and then automatically set it back to the original status?
I think I will, like if something other than a design step changes, yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. Like if it's something like on the test's details or something like that, that would actually be the test field change. And we could do the exact same thing here. I could just click test field change. And copy this exact code down to here. The other thing you can do here is it actually gives you the field name that's being changed. So if you wanted to say, well, the only time we really care about resetting that is if somebody changes the description. So you can actually add if field name equals TS, and I think for it's comments. I'll comment this out so it doesn't throw an error. So if it's comments and is in a value of ready. So once again, like this field name, it's telling you which field changed. So then you can just make your logic based off of that. You say, okay, well, I only want it to change if it, these fields changed. So yeah,
So
you
that's
can absolutely.
a great point. So you just have to be specific. So in the question,
Yes.
they said the test itself, but the test itself is made up of a lot of different fields and steps.
Exactly.
So you just have to be specific in your workflow.
Right, and you can see here the test itself. There's the test and all the fields on the test, but then you have the design steps that are in the test. You have configurations that are part of the test. You have parameters that are part of the test. And this doesn't even get into the things of like requirement linkage. Do you want to change the status back if somebody adds a requirement linkage, or if they add an attachment or something like that? So one of the biggest things, and I'll kind of touch on this later, is you really want to plan out what you want your workflow to be. What exactly do we want to happen? Of course, the scenarios that I've kind of got here, they're very kind of higher level to make it easy to go through. So let me change this back so that I know it will pass syntax check. All right. So I'm going to come out of here, return back to ALM. Okay, so now we're in our test. We have a status already. Somebody comes in here to the design steps, document, it will say document the policy number and policy holder name. So I click off. So at that point, the field has changed. And if I go to details, my status is automatically set back to design. And once again, that's a very, very simple example of what you can do when you start attaching code to events that happen. Of course, this can get a lot more complicated when you start talking about like requirements. Okay, well, we want to have it reviewed, but it can't be reviewed by the same person that created it. All of those rules are things you can add in to the workflow. You can say, okay, well, you created it. You can't be the same person that reviews it, type of thing. So another thing about this is we took a quick look at predefined workflow actions. there is actually a number of actions within ALM that are not listed in that workflow script editor. So one of the things you can do to find those actions is you can use a tool. I prefer the Microsoft's debug view, and I've got a link to this tool in the presentation later. You turn on Capture 132, and it basically will capture every single step that is done within ALM. And if you look down here on like action 22, one of the things I did is I had it running when I went into the plan, and you can see here test plan, design step, move to. So I selected a step in the test. And what I did is I clicked the Renumber Step button up on the top of the toolbar. And you can see here it says action can execute, act, renumber steps. So if I wanted to, I can actually attach logic to the renumber step. And we're going to get into how I can actually capture that trigger here in just a moment. So just because you may not see exactly what you're looking for in the workflow script editor, it doesn't mean it's, like I said, every time you click something, there is an action that gets triggered. So the next thing we're going to talk about is creating a new workflow action. Maybe you've got something that it's not listed there in the workflow, and of course it's not listed in, you know, there's not an action that happens in ALM that does what you want it to do. So what we do is in that script editor, there's a tab at the top for a toolbar button editor. And this is, you know, you thought it was cool when I could reorder the defect steps. What you can do here is you can actually add your own button to the toolbar in any of the modules. And what you do is you basically define an action that's going to be associated with the button that will get triggered and will trigger a workflow. So this scenario, and just so you know, this is an actual scenario that I had somebody come to me a month and a half ago with this specific scenario. So this is a real world scenario. You'll get to see some real world code that I have for this. During manual testing, we're an insurance company, so we create new policies during our testing. And one of the steps is we actually take the policy number that was created and we enter that as an actual results. So we have a step that says document policy ID number. And so we put that in the actual results. So we needed to extract those policy numbers and we need to hand them off to the policy numbers to another team to do further validation. I think they may have needed to validate that the rates were getting calculated correctly in the back end. And we needed to be able to do this at either a folder level or at a test set level. So let's look at this demo. And like I said, personally, I think this is one of the cooler aspects of being able to do anything in the workflow. So let's look here at the test lab and see what our scenario is right now. So we have our release one and we have our regression creating a policy. So you can see here in the steps. Let me expand this a little bit so everybody can see it easier. Step one, step two, document the policy number. And you can see here is the actual number. And what we need to do is we need to pull out, really all we need to pull out is just this number. We need to pull out the number. And of course, you need to know what the test set is, the test name, all of that kind of stuff so that people know, okay, well, this policy number is associated with this test. And really, you know, I played with trying to do it through an analysis report, and I just couldn't get anything that was clean. You know, I could get the actual results, but you know, there was everything else that went around it. And those of you that use the reports know those reports will put out a lot of information. And really our testers, they didn't want any of that. They just wanted, I just want a line that says the test name and the number. All right, let's see what we can do for you. So I'm gonna go back into my customization. Go into the workflow, go back into the script editor. So like I said here, you've got your script editor and you have a toolbar button editor up here at the top. So I'm gonna click that. The first thing you have to do is you have to select which command bar you want to add to. And as you can see here, pretty much everything is in here for ALM. So I'm gonna do the test lab and I'm gonna come down here and click add. So the first thing you got to do is you fill out the fields, the caption. So this is what happens whenever you hover over the item. What do you want it to be? What do you want to display there? So I want to say export policy IDs. and the action name. So this is going to be the trigger, the actual trigger. So I'm going to say test lab underscore export policy IDs. The next thing you get to do is you get to pick the icon that you want the toolbar to have. Now, so first of all, you want to make sure that the icon means something. So I'm going to be exporting policy IDs to Excel. So I'm not going to click like the plus sign or, you know, an up arrow or down arrow, because that doesn't really have a good meaning. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure you're not picking an icon that's already on the toolbar, because you don't want to have two of the same icon, because that would just make it confusing. So what I'm going to do is, you know, we're creating an Excel report. So I'm actually going to click this 177, which is a little, you know, floppy disk icon with an Excel ID on it. You can see it brings the image down here, and I'm going to apply it. And so we have our command export policy IDs. So this will put the button on the toolbar, but now we have to associate that button with a workflow. So I'm going to copy this action name right here and come back into the script editor. Now, in this common script, there is, and it's pre-filled here, action can execute. So every single time you make a click or you do something, this function gets executed every single time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and basically, and the action name is what it clicks on. So I'm basically going to say if action name equals the action that I created over in the toolbar button editor, test lab export policy IDs, then I want it to execute the code, test lab extract policy num. So I'm going to save the common script. Now I'm going to go into the test lab module script. Now there's a lot of code here, so I didn't think anybody would want to see me typing out, you know, 100 lines of code here, because that might just get a little boring. So this one's already here. So I'm going to kind of walk through this real quick, and you can kind of see some of the stuff that you can do in the workflow. So the first thing I do is comes in here. There is on the test set move to. Oh, wait a second. On test folder move to, you can see here I'm setting, okay, what is the current folder ID, the current folder name, or if I'm on a test set, what's the current test set? This is going to tell me when my code starts, when somebody clicks that button, okay, are you selecting just a test set, or are you selecting an entire test folder? And I'll put those in global variables. So a global variable in the workflow, you define a global variable here, and that means it will hold that value for as long as it's running. So, you know, this is the way that you can kind of pass data between your different actions. So if it's a folder, then what I do is I go out and I have a function that just recursively goes through folder structure, pulling out every single test set. The next thing it does is it actually opens up Excel and starts preloading Excel. So the first thing I want the file path, basically the path to the test set name, configuration, run name, run ID, and policy ID. So those are my columns. That's the data I'm giving to the testers. The next thing I do is I use my TD connection and I create a SQL statement, and I'm running a SQL statement against the database. Basically, this is getting every test in the test sets. And once I get the tests, then I come down here and I actually get all of the steps from each step where the expected test says policy number. So in the expected, it actually says, okay, you know, enter policy number in actual field. So I'm getting that actual field. So once I get that data, I print it out to the Excel spreadsheet, and I just keep looping through until I've gone through every test and every test set that's been selected. Now, like I said, we're going to be posting this this whole entire presentation with the recording. I'm also going to be providing some, like this code. I will be providing this code as well. so that you can actually see this and you don't have to try and read it through your through the recording or anything like that. We'll actually provide some code snippets afterwards as well. So I'm going to exit out of here. Yes, I want to make sure I save all my changes. Return. And now as it comes back into the test lab here, you can see we now have a button on the toolbar for exporting policy IDs. So I've got my test set selected. Click export. Of course, it's got to churn through a little bit of data here, not too much. Opens up Excel, and it pre-fills Excel with the information. So here's the path, the test set, the configuration that was run. You can see this was run, the same configuration was run 3 times. And so it pulled every single execution of that test and the policy ID that was created at that time. Now, the same way that we did the, let me get back into the workflow. Now, we were talking earlier about how the renumber step, where you found in the that debug view, it said act_renumber step. This is where you would do it, just like we created our own. If action name equals act renumber step, then execute renumber logic. This is probably one of the most powerful things that is in the workflow, is this ability. It's very powerful to attach code and logic to a lot of the predefined ones, wherever you're exiting out of a defect or something like that. But this right here really opens up a world of possibilities. A couple of other places that I've used this is for importing data. Like very specific, we had one of the companies I was at previously, and we had a very, very specific format to our requirements that we had. And none of the importers could really import it well. But using this, I click a button that says, okay, import this specific file, and we're able to import data that way, is one of the things you can use for this. As you can see here, executing or exporting specific data that you don't really need to go through a full report, a great way to do that. Another instance that we used the same creating a toolbar button was in the defect module, and it was trying to find duplicates. If you find 3 defects that have the exact same name, you might have some duplicates there. So like I said, those are just a couple of really quick examples of what can be done here. And I'm sure once you start thinking about yourself, things are just going to start popping into your head. Oh, I can probably do this. Oh, I can probably do that. And if you're wondering, well, I wonder if it's possible to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, more than likely you can do it. That's what's really great about this, is it really, like I said, it opens up a world of possibilities. So let me get back. A couple of helpful hints and tips as you're going through this. The workflow script editor, it's not a full IDE. It doesn't have full IDE capabilities. You can see it does have a little bit of the tooltips where you start typing and it'll kind of pop up, hey, here are all the fields that you can access, which is really great, and it's very, very helpful. But you don't have the ability to step through any code. You can't step into a function or go line by line. There's nothing like that. You can't watch variables like you do in most IDEs. So what I'll find out myself doing a lot is using the message box statement a lot, and saying, okay, I'll say, okay, am I in this module? Yes. Okay, I'll say message box entering test set new, just so I know where I'm at, what's happening in the workflow. And a lot of message box, the test set ID equals this, to make sure I'm on the right thing. If you're developing a complicated script like the one I just showed with the exporting things to Excel, what I've done is I've actually taken that and developed it actually in UFT, and used the open test architecture, which what the workflow is built off of, and I've developed it in UFT so that I could have the ability to step line by line through my code, use my watches, my local variable, you know, be able to see what's happening in my variables line by line. It'd be great if Micro Focus kind of fledged out the script editor here and make it more of an IDE. But you know, right now that's not happening yet. Hopefully it will. I have my fingers crossed, because it will make things a lot easier there. The other resources here, these are probably the 3 biggest things to look for with the links. First is the OTA documentation. This gives you an explanation of what everything is, the test fields, all of the fields that you can access, how to access them, how to execute SQL commands, pretty much anything you'd want to do to ALM through code, you can, as this is going to be described in the OTA. The next thing is a document that I found that is workflow best practices. Now, when you really start getting into this one's a really big one to know, because there are times when you want to put code in there, but you need to make sure you put it in the right place. For example, I mentioned earlier that action can execute function gets executed every single time you do something. So if you put a lot of code into that function, you're going to bring ALM to I mean, it's just going to slow down. The users are going to hate you. They're going to yell at you because, hey, I click a new button and it takes 15 seconds. You know, you don't want that headache. Trust me. So there's certain places you do not want to put a lot of logic. And this best practices document kind of helps you figure out, hey, if you're going to do this, don't do it. You know, don't do it in this place. It's better to do it over here. And it just gives a lot of good information of things to do and things you should probably stay away from. So you don't have to have learn those lessons the hard way. And the last link is that debug view from Microsoft. It's a free download, and it's really good when you're going through this and you're needing to know, okay, what exactly is happening behind the scenes? What actions are being executed when I, you know, create a new test execution, when I try to run a test, or when I try and move a test from, you know, convert a requirement to a test. The debug view will basically print out every single step that goes along with that. So, like I said, I know I went through this really fast, and this was at a very, very high level, and I'm willing to let's take some questions and figure out if you have any questions about this. Thank you so much for listening. First of all, I appreciate it.
That was absolutely fantastic, Mike, and we do have a few questions here. So how is the workflow affected when a template project is used?
Okay, this one gets a little weird. Of course, when you've got a template project, changes are made to the template, and those changes are pushed down to the individual projects. So what you'll see in ALM, let me switch over to that. Let me get to a project that actually has a template attached to it. And in the workflow script editor, you're going to see 2 things. There's going to be a set of template scripts and then the regular project scripts. So what we were looking at before were the project scripts. And above this, you can see the template scripts and the template common template requirements. So the way this is going to see, you're going to make most of your changes in the template, and those are, of course, going to be here in the template scripts. What gets complicated is you can have a function in the test plan for template test new. And of course, you can have, let me expand this so it's easier to see. In your project test plan, you have a test new as well. What happens is, by default, it will only run the template test new. So if you have code in your regular project class, you say, oh, I want to, for just this project, I want to put it in the test new. It will not by default run that if there is code here as well. What I kind of got around with this is I would say, well, in my template test, I'm going to say call test new. So it's something you've got to be careful about with how it gets executed. Like I said, it's going to first look to see if the action event is defined in the templates, and if it is, that's where it's going to execute. If it's not defined here in the template, then it will execute your project script.
Fantastic.
So that's just something to keep track of and be aware of.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And here's another question for you. Are there any special rights or permissions that are needed for users to execute workflow code?
The only time it is if you are executing SQL commands, like in the code that we had that was looking through trying to extract the policy numbers. There is a field that you have field variable that you have to add in site admin that allows any user to be able to access that. It's because you have to access the TD connection object. And so there's a field in the site admin that you have to add. I'll see if I can find that I'll have to find exactly what that function is, that name is, and I'll make sure that gets added to the answers here. But yeah, that's the only time you need a special access. Otherwise, like when we were doing the changing of the test status back to design,
right?
Anybody that can access and that has the right to change a step, it will do that.
Okay. Good, great. And here's the last question for you. We want to be respectful of everybody's time. Is it possible to move the delete button away from the refresh button?
Not that I know of. Okay. I know you can add objects to the toolbar, but it kind of adds them at the end of the toolbar. As far as I know, there's not a way to reorder the entire toolbar. Okay. I think I know why that. I think I can understand why you'd want to do that, because the buttons are pretty small, and I'm sure that every once in a while you've gotten accidentally clicked the wrong thing. But what you can do is open that debug view and click the delete button and see what action is getting executed. So what you can do, let me get into my project, the correct project. I have to be careful. I've got so many projects that I don't want to make sure I don't edit the wrong one. So to customize. Script editor. So I'm going to kind of do this off the top of my head. I'm positive this is not what the actual action names are, but I would suggest there's probably something. So if the action name equals, I'll just say delete test step, then, throw up a message box. Do you really want to do this? And PV, yes, no. Answer equals. And what you basically do here is, if answer equals no, then default res equals false. Because what this is just what the action is. Action can execute. So it's asking, I'm going to execute this, but can you actually do it? So you throw it up here. Hey, do you really want to do this? No. Then it basically sets the action can execute to false, and nothing happens.
Great workaround. So confirmation.
Yes, but like I said, you'd have to go through that debug viewer to see exactly what this action name is. But if you're trying to keep people from accidentally deleting stuff, that's probably you don't want to revoke their right to do something. You don't want to revoke their right to delete something. This would probably be the quickest way you could do that and the safest way.
Great. Well, thanks, Mike. Excellent job. And one of the things your presentation reminded me of, Mike. So my company is also a Micro Focus support partner. And just in the past week, we've had a few support issues, customers calling in. And had they been on this Vivit local user group meeting, you would have taught them and provided information so that they could have solved those issues themselves. So that's how beneficial it is, everyone. I mean, as I honestly believe you all will believe, I mean, this is great stuff, and you're going to be able to use this out in the real world. So great job, Mike. Really great job. Thank you so much. And we're
Thank
just
you.
going to go through a couple of more slides. But if you all have any questions, feel free to send me an email, and I'll get those over to Mike. But just a few other things I want to share with you is that there are just some very interesting micro-focus events coming up. Find the Performance Engineering Sweet Spot on October 1st. Discover the secret of grilling and IT for IT during COVID-19. And then easily tailor your security to the risk level on October 14th. So you can check out the Microfocus website on those for more information. But these are going to be some excellent virtual events. Be sure to check those out. And then also, there is a call for speakers. So the deadline is coming up fast. It's Friday, October 2nd. And this is for the Agile, DevOps, and Testing virtual event by Microfocus. And that's going to be from December 1st through December 4th. So call for speakers if you have an enlightening story to tell, some information you want to share. You can contact us today, and we would love to have you present something. This is going to be a great event conducted by Vivit. So please get involved. We'd love to hear your story. And the other thing, I want to mention, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on putting together presentations. I've done numerous. I'd be more than happy to offer any tips or suggestions that I might have. But with that, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you so much for attending. Mike, excellent job, sir. Excellent job. Kudos to you. And thank you so much to all of you for attending. Please stay safe and well. Thank you so much. Take care now, everybody. Bye.